Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Neurodiversity Support Podcast. I'm your host, Anika, and I'm really excited to be here today with a different neurodiversity specialist, Tracey-Lee. She's an expert in the field, and she's going to talk to us about facilitators. How do you go about getting a facilitator for your child? Why do you need a facilitator for your child? What does a facilitation look like in the different phases? These are very important questions that we get asked quite often that parents are really struggling to come to terms with. What should their facilitators have studied? What experience should they have? How much should I pay my facilitators? What's the process of getting one? And she's going to help us unpack that within the different phases within the South African educational context. So if those are things that you're interested in finding out, have a listen. I'm excited to talk about today. I think lots of parents are in need of this discussion, especially from your expertise. So we're going to go right ahead and start talking about facilitation and why parents need or children need it and how parents can go about helping their children to meet this need. I guess the best thing that we can start with is asking, how do we get to the point that a child is suggested a facilitator? A facilitator? I swallowed that word.
Yeah. Yes. So from my experience, and from there's a hierarchy of things that need to happen in the formal from foundation phase, from grade 1 upwards, or right up until matric. So, but there are facilitators that are needed for grade R and the younger years as well, which is much less of a process. So I'll start with that because it's quicker, and then I'll go to the formal schooling. So so before grade R, when a child is presenting mainly with behavioral problems, not necessarily aggression, but sensitivity to being in a group, or having trouble with being overstimulated by certain textures like paint, or not being able to complete tasks, or teachers find it very taxing because they have big classes to take a child and do the task with him by himself, because they are mainly group-based classrooms. Then they usually bring the parents in and say, look, we would consider that you bring in someone to help. So at that stage, kids usually don't have a diagnosis. Doctors don't like to diagnose that early, but there are traits that they are monitoring at that stage usually. And then when we get into formal schooling from grade R upwards, they usually they are legally bound to look at the CS documents, which is the screening, intervention, assessment, and what's the last S? Screening, intervention, assessment, maybe it's just statement, and support. Screening, intervention, screening, identification, assessment, and support.
Oh, support. I thought you said report. I was like, but that's not an S. Okay, support. Okay.
Yeah. So, which has a lot of, there's a lot of information, and it's public. The document is public for parents who want to go through it. But it essentially says that a school needs to make all the necessary adjustments and adaptations before they can declare that a child is not suited in that environment. And so that when a child is not coping, be it with academic behavior to a severe point, or issues with reaching developmental milestones, for example, not interacting with peers, different behavioral issues, different emotional issues, such as, needing dark space to work in instead of in a normal lighted classroom. Then schools will then take that to the SBST, the school-based support team, and then they need to provide evidence of why he or she is not functioning, and what the teacher or the learning support department is doing to assist them in that.
Can I ask at that point, how aware are the parents of that discussion happening? Because I find a lot of the parents find when they come to a conclusion, they say, but nobody even raised this with me yet, but you're speaking about meetings that you've had about my child. How?
Yes. So I also find that a lot of parents say that, before they say facilitation, they sort of, everything was fine. And I do think that it is spoken about in your parent-teacher meetings, but because those meetings are so far in between, I think a lot of parents feel that time is also needed, which in some cases it is. An adjustment period is needed, and that is also why you will only see these suggestions for facilitators or for like formal adaptions coming in the third term, because the school needs to also give children time to adapt to new environments, to new learning settings, etc., etc. I do think that there can be more communication with parents, in the same way, the comments that and the observations that teachers and the learning support are seeing in a child need to be taken seriously. And when I say that, I'm not saying that it's the be all and end all, but there needs to be an awareness so that you can work with them as a parent, because it's a biological response to be defensive of this baby that you brought into the world and is perfect to you, because every child is perfect. But I think a lot of the time the resistance comes from, but they're fine at home. They can function at home. And parents need to remember that school is a very different setting from home. And they need to take that information on board when they are getting those little communications throughout the year. Because, and once those once the school-based support team feels that this child really does need extra support, then it'll go to the district-based support team, and they will make the decision whether actually, we need to we need more support for this child to give them the chance. So that's usually the way that, in my experience and in my in the majority of my jobs that I have been a part of, that's usually who has made the decision, and the parents want to try and keep the child in the school. So that's who makes the decisions, but it's not as simple as this child needs help, we need to bring in a facilitator. A lot of adoptions occur before that.
Yeah, but this example is predominantly public school. The process is a little bit different, just a smidge different, a
Just
little
a
bit more
smidgen.
refined, I would say,
Yes,
because sometimes we can speak about it openly, not in an ugly way, but sometimes the need is very severe and the process takes longer because of public school and has to go and be
exactly.
escalated
Yes.
and
This is it's very true. So yes, it is. So that is that that's the process in your formal Model C schools and public schools. Yeah, in private schools, the process is much faster. Um, Keep in mind that the learning support team, such as like the remedial teachers or the educational psychologists, um, and all of those things are usually readily available at private schools. And that's why the process is much
quicker.
faster, because
And they build
you
that
have
case
yeah,
in-house. They're building that case, yeah.
exactly. They build the case in-house, and so they can come back with the information much faster as well. Because these things, they also, it's not just a guessing game. People are not just looking at kids and being like, oh, look, he's not doing this. I wonder if that's an issue. Like we uh, they are very specific, and actually we've tried to get him to get this child up to this level for the last 3 terms, and he hasn't made any improvement.
Yeah, yeah.
So
I
yeah,
find that the parents, especially when they're younger, because it's the first time that they come face to face with not the repercussions not the word that I'm trying to use, but the result of the children's difficulty that
yeah,
they feel, because there's no diagnosis. This is a very subjective conclusion of
yes,
their child. And then
yes,
they're like, oh no, but maybe this lady, that's my child's teacher who I've trusted till this point, now becomes the dragon. And it's like, no, she's
yes,
terrible. Why did she make this conclusion on my child? It's because the process is not through diagnosis, and it is an observation, but it is an observation thing,
yeah.
maybe the first step, but then it's the SPG. I can't, my dyslexia can't say it. The SPG, I always say the SPSP, that's them.
The
And then
SEN, yeah,
so it's a team of people. They come together and
yes,
suggest, okay,
yes,
for maths we think this, for literacy, and it's not the teacher
yes.
thinks, ah, this child is naughty, I can't control him, let's get a babysitter for him in class. That's not, and that's the way it
Yeah,
feels for parents sometimes, I think. Shame.
definitely. I think the one of the biggest resistant factors that I have encountered with parents is that, um, firstly, they feel like it's going to isolate their child. They feel like having somebody more to help their child is going to isolate their child. And the second part is that, because especially if there's no diagnostic, intervention plan in place, they feel that it's going to make them too dependent on being on helping, on having someone to help them, and they and because the teacher's telling them, hey, like, you can't do it without help, they their understanding is, but now you're getting more help, and then what does he do for the next year? And they don't want that. um so they don't want that codependency to develop. So those are the big resistant factors. It is a need. So yeah, so what I can say is that when a decision is made to bring a facilitator in, it's not one that is made very lightly at all. And yeah, and yes, they facilitators are more accessible at inclusive schools or private schools because the process is faster. Um, but yeah, when you hear the word facilitator, like, don't be scared.
Yeah, it's not a bad thing.
Yeah,
Not a,
we're there to help.
yeah. Let's talk about the other phases. How does it differ?
So so in foundation phase, obviously they have numeracy, literacy, life skills. It's there's there's 4 specific frameworks that academically that a child needs to meet. When we're talking about going into intermediate and senior phases, we're talking about almost 13 subjects, from grade 4 to grade 9, and then 7 to 8 subjects depending on what school you're in, from grade 10 to 12. So for an academic facilitator, um, it, it differs in the fact that is in foundation phase, you are really focusing on the foundation of grasping a concept, right? Of really like honing in on the teaching methods of how this little one is going to learn. When we move to intermediate phase, we're looking at mechanisms to help them process information in the best way that we can. And when we get to intermediate phase, we also are allowed to then start implementing formal concessions, which is a big help in assessment. So you can apply for a reader, a scribe, a planner, or audio if the school provides it, and typing. So the bit and but the the big jump for the kids is not necessarily um, those concessions. It is how they process the information in class for academic facilitation. Because what happens is that they find the classroom too overwhelming. And so often you will find yourself in any facilitation job, like wearing many, many, many hats. And so,
The truth.
like,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
so there will be days where your child will be like, I'm not writing notes today. Because, like,
Okay. So
yeah,
I'll do that then.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So, and then you have to negotiate. Okay, I'm gonna write the notes, but you have to at least sit up during class. Or, you know, there will be times where they don't want to be put in a team, and you need to sort of try to maneuver a
Navigate that.
smaller, yeah,
Yes.
like a smaller group of people that you know that they would be comfortable with. And then there are also times that they will just look at you and be like, I don't need your help right now. And you'll just need to like sit back and
Fly.
and
Go,
fly.
baby, go.
So,
Yeah.
so intermediate phase I find is the easiest to work with. And not to say that it's easy, but not to say that it's easy,
Easier.
but because there are so many different elements, there is usually one aspect of school that kids feel comfortable being independent from, because as a facilitator you also grade in how much help you're giving. So it will go from being, them being fully dependent on you actually writing their notes for them and comforting them emotionally, to moderately, to them writing the notes at the beginning and then getting tired, um, or saying an oral in front of me and the teacher, to saying an oral in front of a few people in the class. Like, so you're always grading. And then we move to senior phase, which is, where the freak out happens, because
Yeah,
now
the
we
7 to
are
9. Grade 7 to 9. Puberty. As it
yeah
goes wild.
so that it's a freak out, because we're also moving to Yeah,
High
we're
school?
dealing with lots of hormones. We're dealing with lots of, like the world is about me um,
Fun times.
behavior. Yeah. So, and the awareness that they have somebody helping them when their friends don't, the awareness that they have, um, that they are not able to do tasks on their own like their friends, is just, exasperated in their minds. And so you have to really tread lightly on where you are needed and where you aren't. And as a facilitator, it is really a good tool to help other kids in the class minimally, so that kids so firstly so that the kids in your class are comfortable with you being there, and they don't see you as a, like, as this entity of just like another authority that they don't want to deal with. But it also gives comfort to your child that actually she's not just helping me, she's helping everyone. And it creates a lot of trust when they feel that their peers accept you, because they are already anxious by not being accepted, like, on the whole. So when their peers accept you, it gives them, like, sort of, uh what's it called, uh,
Sense of
what's that,
belonging. I don't know where we're going with this.
I
A
don't know. I
ticket.
don't know what that is.
A pencil. I don't know what this one is, Tracy.
No, when you hand out,
A
like,
buy-in.
when you just,
Oh, don't know.
I guess so. Yeah, I can't think of the word.
Brew.
No, I'll come
Upper
back.
hand.
Anyway,
I don't know. But like while we're there, I was gonna say it made me think of that as well. That a part of talking about facilitation is also how the teachers take the facilitation, because most of the
yeah,
time in senior phase is when the children drifting starts. Like what I mean by that is
yeah,
children moving, migrating to the teachers' classrooms, and if the school hasn't done a good job of preparing the teachers for a facilitator, that a method of trying to engage with the children in a means to
mm,
get acceptance can be perceived by the teachers. What the hell are you doing in my classroom now? Or are you trying to take over my job? And
yeah,
that creates a whole nother rigmarole between awkward dynamic for the facilitator to try and because the children are so receptive to that type of energy from the teacher, and they're like, oh, if the teacher doesn't love you, maybe we shouldn't either. Um,
yeah.
that's a whole
Um,
different component of the
so I
facilitators.
will warn anyone who wants to become a facilitator, like, you have to have a thick skin.
Oh,
If you
damn.
don't, hold on,
Hair on your
hold
chest,
on.
hair on your teeth, thick skin.
Yeah, like,
Werewolf. We're
yeah.
describing a werewolf.
Um, I do find that in senior phase, in grade 10 to 12, where or even from grade 7 upwards, um, I don't have that many issues with teachers from those grades, or in my experience, um, simply because you are moving around, you're not with the teacher the entire time, and the teachers actually are, um, they actually just see how much you are able to do in comparison to what was not being done. Um, and but when you are in a class with a teacher for an entire day, in the you know in the is it intermediate phase? Yeah, intermediate phase and foundation phase. You can, yeah, you and I have been in situations where a facilitator was not, like, facilitation was just not welcome, and it was, they can make it quite apparent that, actually, like, I don't know why you're here. um in that in that role, you need to remember why you are there. It is, I feel it is imperative to work as a team. And when you do have a good relationship with the teacher, it not only makes your job easier, not only makes their job easier, it benefits your little superhero like 1,000-fold. But if that is not the case, you do your job description as you see fit. So you just focus on your child and you do what you need to do, and you write your reports and you make sure that you have all your bases covered with interactions with those teachers. Because I do think that in our curriculums for teachers, for or people who are becoming teachers in our B.Ed curriculums, I'm sure they do inclusive education modules, but it is not ingrained into the curriculum at all. So it is daunting having someone else tell you, actually, this is going to work when you are the figure of authority, and you actually need to be the expert at
You in my
education.
territory, man. You getting so.
So
I would say on that, if I would advise parents, because of the way that the department has structured the protocol of, we go through the teacher, there's a suggestion, we go to SPSP, and then that the parent requests and says, I would like to have a meeting with the graded, the teacher, myself,
yes,
and so that the conversation gets open. And I mean, if you want to go and have a WhatsApp group for all of you, or whatever it is that you as a parent take the reins of your child's support, and not just leave it solely in the school, because that's your responsibility, and it's your baby. I mean, you trust the school, yes, but as a parent, you want to have the best for your baby, so you can ask and say, look, I'd prefer it if all of us are in a meeting together and have that, because that's the team that's holding your baby. So you want that
yeah,
communication to be so open,
and that's your
everybody's
right.
eyes on the prize. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's your right as a
Yeah.
parent, and I think that um I know the supervisor that we both worked under, like,
Yeah.
she was very good with that. Like,
Yes.
anybody that was that was in the team was in a meeting if there was a meeting about the child. And a lot of schools won't include facilitators because they're not paid by the school, so they're not so the school can't necessarily dictate what they say and what they can't say. So when those meetings do happen, then parents should want everybody that's part of
Yeah.
their of,
Yeah.
of their child support team in, and they
Yeah.
should, and they can
Yeah.
request it.
And the
It can
facilitator is not the bottom of the food chain. On the contrary, is, do you know, because they're like, ach, it's just a
yeah,
facilitator. Like, but the
yeah,
facilitator knows, is basically representing the inner workings of your child, because they spend every waking moment at school
yeah,
with your baby. And so many facilitators are also then OPs and go home and continue to
yeah.
facilitate.
So
I mean,
yeah,
they're
so
spending
there's
a lot of time with their child.
so like in some cases, a facilitator is spending more time with the child than the parents, because they going to school and then they are coming home and doing therapies with their kids. Not that the parents aren't involved, it's just the way that the time of the day, yeah, has played out. And so that's, if I could say one thing to any educators watching, is that use your facilitator in your classroom as a resource, and and not as the separate person who is paid by someone else. If you have something to laminate and the kids are and their kid is doing something independently, ask them to help. It's not, yeah, it's not an insult to also to help your teacher do admin, or to round up the kids when they're quiet. I mean when they're out, when they're making a noise. It's like, use your facilitator as somebody that can help with class management, that can help take the load off, just as you would a class assistant, because that integration allows the class to then be more cohesive as well for the kids. Yeah. Yeah.
I
It's,
like that phase. That's my favorite
no.
phase.
It's not that I don't like that phase. It's not that I don't like it. It's just, it is much more difficult because the stakes are higher. Because now you're preparing to leave the school environment. So from subject, choosing your subjects, to being able to maintain good grades, to the social environment is very hard to navigate. Like, and I know we all like, yeah, I wish I was back in school, but when you
No.
realize how mean teenagers are.
No. That's a wish I've never had, actually. Who wishes to be back at school? It's a lion's
I
den.
I remember facilitating matric, and I sat down in class, and like these girls were talking about some nonsense that they were fighting about, and I was just like, really, that's taking up space in your mind. But so yeah, so the reason why it's difficult is because there's a lot more pressure on these kids, because now they've made it into the FET phase, and so it is expected of them. And I say expected in quotation marks because that's the pressure that they feel, especially if they're in the mainstream school and they don't have any exemptions such as languages. Then yeah, it's a lot of pressure, and it causes the most mental health issues, um, on top of any neurodiverse issues they may have, or behavior issues. And so that's why it's difficult, because you really are only navigating one issue at a time. So it's really, you just get a kid that is on the autism spectrum. It's more likely you'll get a kid on the autism spectrum that may that may struggle with depression or anxiety. And yeah, and so that is quite difficult to manage. And so in that phase, you lean a lot on your learning support staff. You make sure that your learner has frequent interactions with them. You make sure that in class you have specific rules and boundaries. And when I speak about boundaries with this phase, they have to be extremely strict, because this is the phase where they'll push boundaries from 5 years old, but this is the phase where they are trying to break any boundaries that they can. So I always had, for example, I had a rule with my student that he's not allowed, or he or she is not allowed to message me after working hours. So, and that might seem like very, standoffish to some people, but if there was an issue, mom and dad also had my number, and could contact me. And that was because um, the student did have um, many issues that would be played up on to sort
Dependency.
of, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. We don't want dependency disorders, thanks. Let's
Yeah.
try and manage that. Yeah.
So you do need to set boundaries. and
Yes.
and in that setting also, because they're teenagers and they feel like they're adults, they want to treat you like a teenager, they want to treat you like a friend.
Yes.
And so you need to make that clear boundary, that I'm
From the
there for
beginning.
you. Yeah. Like, I'm there for you. I have your back, but I'm not going to get involved um in friend arguments, for example, or I'm not going to um sit and listen to the gossip of the grade and give my 2 cents. Like, you have to make it very clear to them that there's a boundary. But in saying that, within the classroom environment, it's much easier to manage FET learners because the curriculum is then rigid. It's not, you can do this, you can't, like, you can choose. It's, you have to do this, and it has to be done by this time. And if you, as a facilitator, feel like, hey, this is too much for my kid, like, you need to break this up, or we need to do this, we can hand this in here and then hand this in at another time, then you need to have those conversations with the teachers and the grade heads. And I have done that before. I have said, this is going to be too much. You already have 3 other projects. There's no possible way we're going to get this oral done. And then it was, the decision that, okay, we'll extend it by a week and we'll do it during break. Like, it, so that's your main goal in FET, is to make sure that deadlines are met and in a reasonable mandate that is suited to the well-being of your child, not necessarily to the school, within reason.
Yeah, I
Within
think
reason.
that's an important thing to raise, is what the parents expect from the
Yeah.
facilitator. I think there's this huge, what people don't realize is, if it's a private facilitator, the cost is not necessarily minimal.
Yeah.
So, and because of that, I mean, so obviously that's, so now that we brought it up, just say that it's something that you negotiate between you and your child's facilitator, keeping in mind your facilitator, you can hear, as to have a certain amount of knowledge, which means you're not getting any guppy that could be a basic babysitter. There's a lot of educational psychology, OT, a lot of neurodiversity specialization that's going in. It's not going to be somebody that just has a degree. So you're not paying play money. And that's fine, because you love your baby and they're worth it. But because you're paying a little price tag, a pretty penny, the expectation is then that my child's marks are soaring and everything is rosy. But the facilitator, any good facilitator, knows that there's no level of plagiarism, if I can just put it that way. You making it accessible within their means, their academics, and that's a very hard pill to swallow for parents, and even for the schools, for a great part, because they're like, okay, so then what are you doing here if they're still struggling? I'm helping them to access it. I'm not sitting there and doing the project. What do you think we're doing here? So what can the parents expect realistically? And I'm talking about literally, practically, in school. So we've spoken about it quite a bit. Foundation phase, you there, almost seeming like a teacher's assistant, but not. It's different because it's individualized. And then the shape shifting that you have to do in the FET phase, where it's good for me not to be there all the time. If he's doing it, let him fly. That's the whole point. We're trying to get him to be ready for the outside world. What are the expectations? We're talking about job description, just in terms of marks, success. That's a tough one.
I'm great, right? Like, I'm amazing. But I don't have a
And she's
magic wand.
humble.
And I'm so humble. But yes, I don't have a magic potion that's going to fix all of the issues.
Yeah.
I don't. And um and no facilitator is going to. Your child is not going to go from, you know, barely passing to getting straight A's. Um, and and the issues that they have socially are not going to magically disappear because they are now doing well in school.
On the contrary, it
And
might get a little bit awkward before it gets a little bit better. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
and there's so much dynamic. And I also need to say this while you were saying those points. Um, like the shape shifting and the like honing in the academics, they all overlap. Like it's not that that you only do this in foundation or only do this in intermediate. Like it's all overlapping. And so it honestly does depend on how well your child takes to the process, and if that was needed for your child. um and when I say that, I don't mean that, oh, you're not seeing an improvement in grades in facilitation after a month, let's stop. It just means that if, for example, in foundation phase, we have a very big problem now, especially since after COVID, um, because children were isolated for so long, and even before that, just because of the use of screens, pencil grip is a huge problem. Pencil grip is such a huge problem, and I see many parents being like, oh, okay, we're going to buy these fancy pencils. We're going to buy the most expensive, like, pencil grip holders. Um, when actually, like, you can just get a funny rubber and, those rubber toppers, and stick it on the top. It makes the pencil heavy and it moves it to the side. Like, so,
I mean, we know things. Ask us. I feel, yeah.
yeah. So ask, we'll help you. And like you said, it's not facilitation is not a degree, right? It is, and it's not a steadfast science either. So when you are bringing a facilitator in, they might have methods. For example, this can go very wrong or very right. A visual calendar. I have had
Very
um,
true. Very
very wrong
true.
or very
That's,
right.
don't know what
So
kind of worms
I'll
you're opening here.
Yeah, like I'll give you an example. I've facilitated two different little boys, right? And of the same age, different schools, but of the same age. The one, everyone, his whole therapy team, all of, like, his teacher, his parents were like, no, the visual calendar, and wanted to make it as practical as possible. So we took pictures, actual, like, pictures of everybody, and put him
Oh,
in little
wow.
outfits, like for when it was cooking, we put on a chef's hat,
Holy
whatever.
moly. We did the
Yeah,
most.
we did the
Shoo.
most. Like, we put it up in the class. We, gave him his little magnet to, like, move. Never looked at it. Never looked at it. The
There
other
was too
little,
much desperation in the process there. They came on too
yeah,
strong. Whenever you put in
um,
so much effort, they're like, no.
yeah, they like, what you doing? And but he was very visual, and at that stage, um, not fully verbal. That's why it came through as such an important thing. Um, and I had another little boy, also not fully verbal at the time, but severe ADHD, and it was thought that so his ADHD came out quite behaviorally. So it was thought that it wouldn't work because he would just move it, like, tear it off or whatever. Um, actually moved schools with him, and his teacher was like, no, she's gonna try it. She's gonna try it. And I was like, okay, try it. And it worked. He loved it. He loved the independence of, like, moving his star to the next one, and, like, actually seeing his day. And that wasn't my idea. That was the teacher's idea. And so this is why I'm saying, like, it's a team effort. So it is also trial and error with the
Yes,
child.
yes,
We need,
100%.
and that's what parents need to understand, that they aren't going to be good at everything either. If a child struggles with maths but loves biology, we can't you're not going to put more into maths so that he can be better at biology. You're going to help him be good at both, because what they're good at helps them to gain confidence to
Confidence. Yes,
try.
I can do it. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. I want to say, because before, this is a dangerous thing that could turn, that the trial and error, because when you facilitate a child, 95% of the time you're facilitating the parent to a great extent too. And I'm saying that
Woo,
with
you
love, parents.
putting
I'm saying
points,
that with a lot of love. But the reason why is because you're anxious as your baby. I don't know. This is, you're like frazzled. And it comes from a place of tender love and care for your baby. This is my child. I feel ill-equipped to deal with the needs for my baby. So I know where it comes from, and we take it with that understanding of, I know, because I'm also caring on that level. But trust the process. Now, the trial and error, sometimes it's not let's change methods. Sometimes it's let's give the method a chance. Because they're like, no, it's not working, let's move on to the next. But sometimes it just needs to be, so trial and error tot 'n punt. Like, but sometimes you also have to let them like simmer into it. And because like the social thing we spoke about, let's say the child is autistic and doesn't want to be touched, and we say let's try handshaking. Initially might hate it, but the exposure therapy is important, and then flourishes. But that process, and if you're going to give a realistic time, 6 months to a year, like that, and we parents are like 6 days, it's been a week. Where are we on
what,
that?
yeah, like what are you doing, or like, yeah,
And
what do you actually
obviously
do? Yeah. Yeah.
every baby is different, but it takes time, and you just trust the process, and that's why I was like, not trial and error, let's flip through the, okay, that didn't work. Like sometimes you just say bait fast,
Yes.
it's
Yeah,
going to,
and then you monitor it. You
yeah,
monitor if you are in the classroom with them, right? So you might not be seeing progress in big strands, but it might be, for example, the paint, like, or
yeah,
glue. Let's say glue, because like even me,
the
I don't like
craft
my
glue.
hands. Yeah, I don't like my hands
Where
sticky.
I've
I don't.
seen recently another kid put their hand in it on purpose so they could peel it off because they're sensory seeking. I was like, what are you doing? Like my brain was so.
Yeah.
But you see how they don't fit this. They don't all fit the same. Oh, sorry, I interrupted you.
No. That's not. That, you see, that gave me like a little bit of sensory
Like,
overload.
ugh.
Like, I think, but it can literally go from being like really overstimulated from even seeing glue to being sitting at a table near glue. You don't like, and that, like, that's the process from, it's not, I'm because Tracy's here, because the facilitator's here, he's going to be able to touch glue and be okay. That's
Yeah. So
and
can I unpack that? Like
yeah, you
say,
can.
because Tracy's here, there's a facilitation of the response. So that's what Tracy is doing, is saying, okay, let's try and be a little bit closer. And when we do have a freak out, there's a facilitator to say, okay, now let's take a breath. And I think that's where the disconnect is of parents of like, what do you do then? So what are you
Yes,
actually doing? So
and that's
let's use
a
the glue
very good
example
point.
then. And explain like, okay, now I'm going to take you for a little walkity walk, or maybe
Yes,
let's distract by saying, look at this guy. That's the facilitation, you
that
know?
that's yes, that is a huge part of facilitation, which for some reason we forgot to mention, is the yeah is is the receptiveness to the response. And because you are with your child, you don't need a freak out to know that they're freaking out. And it happens, it happens quite. I mean, obviously I've been doing this for years, so there is experience involved. But when you get to know a child, like you get to know their triggers, and you get to know, if they're shrugging their shoulders,
Certain kind of
like,
stims.
yeah,
Yeah, and you can tell the different kinds of stims. Okay, this
oh
is a
yeah,
soothing stim. This is I'm about to. Whoa,
yeah,
whoa. This is a bad
yeah.
one. Yeah.
And yeah, and you also get very good at knowing, actually we need to push through, like
Knowing their
yeah,
thresholds.
knowing their threshold. So, and that is also it's a very good point, because when they do get overstimulated, this is the part that worries parents so much, because they this is where, the teachers are complaining about tantrums, or um like being
Upsetting the rest
incompetent.
of the class. I hate that one.
Yeah,
Oh,
upsetting the rest of the class. And this is where you now can take them outside, or you can put them in a tunnel in the playground to, like, calm down, or yeah, or you can make them run around, and or take them up to the OT room so that they can, throw themselves down in a safe space. So, and those parts are very important. And yes, obviously it's not our goal to take them out of the classroom, but when it's necessary, we need to understand that actually at that point in time, taking them out is better for their health, for their overall well-being, than the academic part of it right now, or the social part of it right now. And that's a part that parents really don't understand. Like, you're taking them out of class, but aren't they going to miss work? Or, like, what happens now? Like, how do we stop it? That's the big thing. Like, how do we stop it? And
yeah. And our goal is
uh,
not stopping. Our goal is
no,
dealing with it.
yeah.
Skills.
And actually, my one former colleague who is a OT, she said to me, she went to a conference and she said something that resonated so deeply. She's like, we spent years, this lecture said, or was telling her, that we spent years and so much money on trying to reduce um, kids being overstimulated. But at that point in time, that's what their body wants to do. So why don't we just let them be overstimulated? And so their body can, yeah.
Wait, I
And
need a
I
moment.
was like, oops.
Well,
And I was like,
I'll go back to the point where we made before, is that as a good facilitator that has a connection with your baby, you
yeah,
know when it's the time to allow it to happen,
exactly.
and you know
That's exactly the point.
when it's a detrimental one, when you're like, this is too much.
Yes.
Actually, let's
So
yeah,
and I think that's the key point, is
yeah,
where it's not, I don't want to use the word dangerous, but we need to allow them to be themselves in that moment, in the safest space possible.
yes, and
That
accepting and
doesn't
loving.
happen. And accepting and loving them. If they're going to be overstimulated and throw a tantrum in the class, or accidentally hit over something because they can't control, like, they can't control their impulses at that moment in time, when they come to, like, now they have an awareness that their friends were around them and that this happened, no matter how young they are. And so, yeah, so, yeah. And 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 even when, and this is a note for any future facilitators out there, you will be hit and scratched, and and your hair pulled. Yeah. Make a note to all parents, please cut your children's fingernails. Like, they are literal razors. I have, like, so
So
many
true,
scars, like,
so true. Yeah.
But
And you just have to mimic that calm, that even though you're
yeah,
bleeding, you're just like, it's
yeah,
okay, blood.
it's okay, it's okay. It's
Yeah.
it's this is war scars. But so yeah, so that's the distinction of letting them feel what they're feeling or helping them calm down from that in the safest space possible for them.
Yeah. 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 I wanna while we're talking about this, if we're gonna talk about tips for parents, is that if we're having open communication with our facilitator and they may bring up things that you may not have been aware of about your child and how they process things, and it takes you off guard because you're like, this is my child, I should have known that they struggle with glue, but I don't. And then there's a small part of a parent that's defensive and hurt that they didn't know that. But the key that I'm actually coming to is that the consolidation that happens post any meltdown that the facilitator does, that is non-shameful, accepting, like, that's okay, and next time we're gonna, etc., needs to be mimicked at home. And
Yes.
sometimes
Yeah.
at home, it's, what's wrong with you? Why didn't you frustrated? I get that. I understand. But that pro tip for parents and for facilitators is that you speak the same speak, that you do the same things, that you deal with the decompression the same way, so that there's consistency for them, so that that positive dialogue then becomes internalized and they're doing it for themselves. And that's what we want them to be able to flourish on their own. Yeah.
Yes, I completely agree. Um, I would even go further to say that what is done in school is mimicked at home and vice versa. If we find something at home that is actually helping, then like relay it to us so that we can implement it. In the same way of, I'm just going to use the pencil as an example again. If I'm using like a rubber to make their pencil heavier for their pencil grip. Yeah. Well, it's for pencil grip so that it slides,
I thought you're
or you
talking about
can.
that sleeve one, the eraser
Yeah, the
that's like a
pencil,
sleeve
that
on a
that is the
pencil.
pencil grip. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's pencil
Yeah.
grip. Yeah. Um, or you could just like draw a smiley face over here and say that the pencil needs to kiss the smiley face.
I saw a friend of mine put a sticker on the pencil and said your thumb has to
Yeah,
be on the sticker, like
yeah.
flat on the sticker, and then that helped quite a bit as well. But we're not talking about
So okay,
methods
now
to
we're
pencil
going into
grip.
technique. I'm giving
Yeah.
away all my secrets, yeah. But the point is, if the feedback is this is how we are adapting so that they can have a better pencil grip, use that method at home when they are drawing with a pencil. Um, so it is consolidated. Because what happens then is that we can then grade. Okay, now they always need the pencil grip. Maybe they don't need it for just free drawing. Then maybe they don't need it for big letters. Then move into
Yeah. The
smaller letters.
progress, that slow
Yeah.
progress.
So that, like, that's and very slow progress, please. It's not gonna happen overnight. But that's a huge tip for parents, is try to incorporate as much as you can. And I understand it's not easy. I understand you also have most people have other kids. I understand it's very overwhelming. Um, the one tip I do want to give facilitators and parents is, when facilitators give their feedback. So I give weekly feedback. That's just the way I've always done it. Um, and because I'm private, I send my feedback to the parents. Um, it might not be exactly the same as the school, just because, like, the school might need a more formal format of it. But I send it in a written form. And I think that helps a lot, because I think that when you speak directly to parents, like you said, because this is a new process and they didn't see this, so they either feel guilt or they feel defensive. It gives them time to process before they respond. In the same way, I would tell parents, if you are unhappy about certain aspects of facilitation, make the communication written first, so that the facilitator can also take time to respond, because facilitation is a very emotionally attached job. It is not something that you can separate, because you
You have to
you
care
are the
deeply for
child.
that
Yeah,
child. Yeah,
you
yeah.
have to care extremely heavily. This is not to say that you guys can't speak all the time, or like, to get new feedback. It's just that when because things in facilitation aren't always pretty. They aren't only going to be happy moments. They are going to be moments of, why did this happen at school, if you were there? And then you have to attest to the fact that, actually, I went to the bathroom and then this happened, or he was working independently, so I stepped out. And then so it's but in that same breath, it's also, okay, homework came back not done. Why is No, because he had a tantrum, or like he was too overwhelmed and he couldn't complete it. Um, and then it happens like 3 or 4 times. Then we need to ask ourselves, okay, maybe we don't do homework in the kitchen where everyone's cooking and being noisy. Maybe we try and do it on the floor in the lounge when the TV's on. On the nice carpet that he feels the texture of warmth, or whatever the case may be. So it's all about working together. That's
Yeah,
the be all and
100%.
end all. Yeah.
Yeah. I think what I would finish off with, because I think parents have a very good understanding of what to expect. But what if somebody wanted to be a facilitator and they wanted to be the one that works with one child to help them to be in the mainstream? What exactly, and for parents also that need to find a facilitator, what does facilitator generally need to study? And secondly, where do we even find facilitators?
This is a very, very good question. um so I so This is a difficult question for me, because I didn't come from a background in education. I came from a background in occupational therapy,
Yeah.
and 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 joint facilitation.
Which is
But
your
most,
strength?
hey,
Which is your strength,
which yeah,
actually?
which is my strength. Yeah. I just found it
Take
a
it,
little bit
take it,
late.
take it, take it. Yeah.
um, but yeah, so I feel that most facilitators will be studying either towards being a teacher or in the psychology realm. Um, but I need to say this, and please don't take offense if you hear it. It takes a very special person to be a teacher of a of a child with different abilities. And it does not mean that you are a bad teacher if you are not that person. Please don't go into facilitation because you think that you are great at your practicals and one child is going to be easier. Don't do
That's
that.
the
Have
opposite.
an yeah.
It's not going to happen.
Yeah, you.
No.
um, please don't do that. And the same for people going into the psychology realm. If your interest um doesn't lie within um you know special needs, or within the realm of neurodiversity, and your interest, for example, is more aligned with clinical psychology, for instance, I guess, like don't don't force it, because kids are mean. They will know, and they will tell you.
They can feel it. They're feelers. I swear
Yeah,
they see right through you.
And it won't be good for anyone. I will say, unfortunately, I would choose someone with experience over degree.
Yeah, no,
100%.
100. Me
Um,
too.
so yeah.
Me too.
In terms of in terms of who would be a good facilitator, somebody who's been in school environments, whether it be in a student teacher role or class assistant role, or or studying towards an education based degree, somebody in similar settings as well, in psychology degrees and in the psychology realm, um, that that would be the formal degree associated with experience. Where to find them? Well, you can contact Anika. I'm sure she knows.
Yeah, it's difficult. I ask that because I don't think parents realize what a pot under the rainbow search it is. Because it's
Yeah,
such a new
concept.
concept to
Yeah,
education, and it's actually very specialized. Like you're talking about students, because what it may have been before was like as a means to an end. While you're studying part time, you make a little money on the side, but it's so specialized, and it sucks the life out of you if you didn't go into it for what it is, because you need to love neurodivergence. You need to have that maternal innate patience. I mean, the level of patience you must have is beyond saint level, and you must want to do that. And if you don't want that and you don't have that natural skill, which I always argue the same thing that you said, and I'll reiterate it, is that evidence, experience surpasses any sort of textbook knowledge that you may have. I mean, somebody that may have been brought up with an older brother that's autistic is going to be far more experienced and equipped to do it than somebody that has a doctorate in neurodiversity support of some kind. So it's a very, and why I'm asking this is because for parents, you really have to do that vetting process perfectly, and don't feel scared of saying I want to have a trial period. I want to, because sometimes they on paper may be the perfect person, but just not the click for your baby, and that's also fine. I mean, we humans, and like we said, it's a very emotional, clicky kind of a job. It is very maternal. It's very, the souls need to agree with each other. It's not just professional.
yeah. And I would add onto that a little bit to say, to remind parents that this is their decision. It is not purely the school's decision. A lot of times, parents have come to me and said, "Oh, they're using someone from the school who they think is a good fit." And oftentimes, I've argued the point that it's how do they know it's a good fit? Have they spent time with the child? Have they been in this role before? Like, what are no, I mean, what is the experience? And um, don't be scared to have a trial period and be like, actually, I don't think it's going to work out. But in that same breath, we also need to remember that it is an adjustment period for our little one. So we need to look at if he's still adjusting, or if it's actually not working after that.
Yeah, yeah. So a
After that,
longer time,
after that
I would
period.
say a month trial is,
Yeah, I
especially if they're younger. Is,
especially
but
for young.
and I mean, any person that's going to be truly in love with neurodivergence will 100% understand and endorse if you say it's It's not. They would actually know it before you know it. Also, it's
Yeah.
not a fit. It doesn't. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. I think that is
Yeah.
the awkwardness for parents, that they don't realize that it is just a puzzle click of souls, because it is
Yeah.
we need to speak the same kind of vibe. We need to have the same. It doesn't. You don't always fit with everyone, and that's fine.
It's perfectly fine. And as facilitators, like, our job is anyway to make your child independent, to not need us. So we used to have been told, like, hey, like, this kid can do without you now. It's hard when it happens, but like,
Then
it's
you're
happy
winning.
feelings as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Then you're winning.
So
Uh.
so take that decision on yourselves as well. Work
Yeah.
with the school, and like, not
A
separately from
team.
them.
A team. Last question, that we're done. How
Yeah.
long usually does a child need to be facilitated?
Yeah.
That's a loaded question for the last question.
Very loaded question. It would be very dependent. It would be extremely dependent on the child's needs and the expectations of the child. Yeah, and and their diagnosis. So I know that I started with a little boy who at the time was nonverbal, had behavioral outbursts, wouldn't touch a pen. When I ended with him, he could, and this, of course, only wasn't only me, it was obviously the whole team. When I ended with him, he was writing everyone's name, talking nonstop, couldn't get him to stop talking. Unless
Please
you
talk,
gave
please
him,
talk. Okay, now stop. Now
yeah,
just, yeah.
unless you gave him something to eat, and I mean that and like, oh, just the cutest thing. But I mean, that process took almost 2 years.
Yeah.
But then uh, there are kids that I know have been facilitated from grade 3 right up until matric.
To matric. And most of
So
them continue to see neurodiversity support therapists after school as well.
yeah,
So,
and I have been in touch with a boy that I did facilitate in matric. He's new facilitator, so they are facilitators at university level as
yes.
well.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I
So
think it's really has to do with what exactly their needs are, because some of the needs are developmental and they can move past them, and then there's some of like ADHD sort of needs that are not really going to go away. And then they need different support, but continual support. And then it goes all the way till matric. I think the big thing is for parents is that, and we started with it and we'll end with it, it's not a little potion that's going to make all the problems go away. And the needs are shape-shifting. Your child is shape-shifting. That's the nature of it. And just trust the process, because the facilitator, to their core, wants the best for your baby, and they'll never say, "Ach, no, he needs facilitation because they need a job." That's not. That's not like.
no, we
Not
won't.
always. No, not
It'll
most times.
it'll show in your reports. Like,
Yeah.
it will, like, because you can't, maybe you'll be like, maybe another term, but in your reports you're like, I'm so proud, like, he did this and this and this and this. It will show. Like,
Uh,
there'll be
funny. Well, I think the big thing is that what success looks like for a child that's successfully facilitated is not just the mark, but you will
yeah,
see that child has changed emotionally,
yeah,
physically, mentally. Then you know
absolutely.
there's progress. And then the good thing is not to just, okay, well, there's some progress. Pull out the facilitators just to let that simmer and let them reach their potential. Okay, thank you, Tracey-Lee. We did a lot of
Thank
talking
you
today.
so much.
If the parents are still confused about what facilitation is after this, please contact Tracy. Because I think we
You're
really wrapped
welcome.
it up.
You're welcome to
Yeah. And
contact
if you're in
me.
Cape Town, you could use Tracy also, because she's amazing. And good.
Oh,
What is
thanks.
the other word you used as well for yourself? which I agree with. I'm just teasing you.
I use a lot of good words for myself. Like affirmations are a thing, guys.
Yes. She's practicing what she's preaching for the kids. Like, be kind to yourself. Upshift. Thank you so much, Tracy. Have a lucky evening. It was very interesting. I'm actually so happy that Tracey-Lee took the time to come and speak to us about facilitators. It's something that is growing and booming within the educational system of South Africa at the moment. And I know for a fact that many parents actually need facilitators for their children, but just don't know how to go about. So thank you for listening, and thank you for Tracy for sharing your expertise with us. If you're wanting to become a facilitator and you don't know what to study and you would like to do a few courses on it and how to best be a facilitator and to become a neurodiversity support specialist, then contact Neurodiversity Support, because we do offer that type of training. Thank you so much for listening, Oaks.
to
Have a
help
lucky day.
facilitators
Bye. Be the best facilitators that they can be.